To better understand what we get when we create a new camera object, select the 15 and the 50mm camera, then delete those. We'll work with this 35mm camera, but the properties can apply to any camera. If we twirl down the properties for this layer, we can see that there are transformation options. Additionally, there are camera options, and if we twirl those down, we can see that many of the options located in the camera preference dialog box are also located here under camera options. We'll twirl these up and take a look at the transformation properties. Like other 3D layers, I have position values for X, Y, and Z, orientation and rotation values for X, Y, and Z. You'll notice that there is no scale value for this. It doesn't matter how big the camera is, it's still going to be using the same parameters described by its preferences. However, rather than having an anchor point, the camera has a point of interest. We select the camera, we can see the point of interest located at the center of our composition. If we modify the X value for our point of interest, by clicking and dragging to the left, we can see that by changing the value for the point of interest, we're changing where the camera has to look. This isn't changing the rotation, but changing exactly where the camera is focusing. We'll undo that change, then look at the camera itself. If we zoom in using the period on the keyboard, we can see that there is an axis at the front of the camera. Now if we click and drag on the axis using the selection tool, you'll see that we move both the camera and the point of interest together. We'll undo this and take an even closer look at the icon for the camera. Rather than clicking on the axis, we'll click this time on the small rectangle defining the camera's body. By clicking and dragging on the camera's body, we're moving only the position of the camera and not the point of interest. These can be very helpful shortcuts when you're setting up camera animations. We'll undo this move, then go back to our active camera view. Remember, we can use the escape key to toggle back to that view. I'll use Option / to bring this back into the center of the composition panel. We can see up in the toolbar, we now have access to the camera tools. By using any of the camera tools, including Orbit, XY Position, XY Track, or Z Track, we'll change the values for the camera. First, we'll click to select the XY track. Then by clicking and dragging in the comp window, it may appear that we're moving the layers around, but in fact, we're moving the camera and the point of interest around, as you can see in the timeline. Again, we'll undo to eliminate this move. Next, we'll use the C key, and rather than simply choosing the Z track, use the C key again to go to the camera orbit tool. This time, with the camera orbit tool selected, clicking and dragging inside your comp window, that we're only moving the position of the camera around. The point of interest is staying in the exact same place. We'll undo this and take a closer look at the point of interest. So by default, our camera is always linked to this point of interest. No matter where we move the camera's position, it's looking at the point of interest. Doesn't matter if we rotate this, it has to look at our point of interest. Animating these two properties together may be a bit frustrating at times, so instead we can turn this off and animate only the properties of the camera. To do this, we need to make a modification to the layer. So in the layer pull-down window, let's go to the way we transform this layer. Then underneath the transformation options, let's go down to Auto Orient. Currently, the camera's orientation is always towards the point of interest. We can turn this off by simply clicking the radial button for off. We'll accept this, when once we do, you'll see in the timeline that we no longer have the property settings for anchor point. However, they're not gone, they're merely hidden. Now this does bring up problems from time to time. Currently, we've left our point of interest at the center of our scene, but because the camera is no longer linked to that, we can simply use position, orientation, and rotation to tell the camera where to point. We'll modify the orientation and some of the rotation just a little bit, just to show that we can be off-axis now with the camera and not focused on the anchor point. If, however, we want to go back to our anchor point, with this layer selected, we can go up to our layer again, then from Transformations, choose Auto Orient. We can turn on Orient towards point of interest again and click OK. Once we do, we get our point of interest back, but notice that the camera hasn't snapped back to looking at the center of our scene. Furthermore, if we change our point of interest at this point, we see that the point of interest does have an influence over the position of our camera. The reason for this is that the point of interest is based on the camera's orientation and rotation facing 0 when it's implemented. So you'll probably want to decide whether you want to use point of interest to animate your camera or rotation, and not jump back and forth trying to figure out which one you want to use. By clicking on Reset Transformation, we'll reset all of the transformation values for our camera.